The letter trembled in my hands, the words searing into my mind like the flames that devoured my family 5 years ago. My heart pounded as I read it again. The fire was never meant for them. It was meant for you. No signature, no return address, just those chilling words scrawled in black ink on plain white paper. I stood frozen in my cramped apartment, the faint smell of smoke lingering in my memory, as if the past had clawed its way back to life. 5 years ago, I was 16, fast asleep when the fire started. The official report called it an electrical fault, faulty wiring in our old house. I barely made it out, coughing and stumbling through the smoke, my lungs burning as I collapsed on the lawn. My parents, my little sister, they didn't. I've carried the guilt of being the only survivor every day since, replaying that night, wondering why I lived when they didn't. Now, this letter suggested it wasn't an accident. Someone wanted me dead. I locked the door, double-checked the windows, and sat on the couch, the letter staring up at me like a confession. My first instinct was to call the police, but what would I say? I had no proof, no suspects, just a cryptic note that could be a cruel prank. But something about it felt too precise, too personal. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to find them sitting here. I grabbed my phone and started digging into the past. The fire had been big news in our small town, so I searched old articles online. Most reiterated the same story. Tragic accident, faulty wiring, no foul play suspected. But one detail caught my eye in a local paper's archive. A brief mention of a neighbor, Mr. Callahan, who'd claimed he saw someone near our house that night, holding what looked like a gas can. The police dismissed it. Callahan was old, half-blind, and known for tall tailies. I hadn't thought about him in years, but he lived just a few streets away. It was late, but I couldn't wait. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, the letter tucked in my pocket. The night was cold, the streets quiet except for the hum of distant traffic. Callahan's house looked as run-down as ever, the porch sagging under years of neglect. I knocked, half expecting no answer, but the door creaked open. His eyes, cloudy with age, squinted at me. "You're the kid from the fire," he said before I could speak. "What do you want?" I showed him the letter, explained what it said. His face tightened and he gestured me inside. The house smelled of stale coffee and dust. He sat me down and leaned close, his voice low. "I told the cops back then, but they wouldn't listen," he said. "I saw someone that night skulking around your place, tall, wearing a dark coat. I couldn't see his face, but he was pouring something from a can near your garage. Smelled like gasoline. By the time I got my glasses and went outside, he was gone and the flames were already high." My stomach churned. "Why didn't you push harder? Tell someone else," he sighed, rubbing his hands together. "I tried. But I'm just the crazy old man to them. No one believed me. Besides, after the fire, I got a note too, said if I kept talking, I'd be next." A chill ran through me. "Do you still have it?" He shook his head. "Burned it. Didn't want that kind of trouble." I left his house with more questions than answers. Whoever sent the letter knew something about the fire and about me. But why wait 5 years, and why target me at all? I was just a kid back then, no enemies, no secrets, or so I thought. Back home, I scoured my memories for anything that might explain it. My parents were ordinary. Dad worked at a hardware store. Mom was a nurse. My sister was only 10, obsessed with drawing and her pet goldfish. Nothing about a screamed target. But then I remembered something odd. A few weeks before the fire, Dad had been acting strange, jumpy, checking the locks every night, whispering to Mom when they thought I wasn't listening. I'd overheard him mention a name once, Elliot. I thought it was nothing, just adult stuff. Now it felt like a lead. I searched Elliot online, cross-referencing it with our town and my family's names. Nothing solid came up, but a post on X from a local history group mentioned an Elliot Grayson, a businessman who'd owned half the town's real estate a decade ago. He'd been involved in some shady deals, rumors of strong-arming people into selling their properties. My parents' house was on a prime lot, big yard, close to downtown. Could that be it? Had someone wanted our land? The next morning, I went to the library, digging through old property records. Sure enough, Grayson had made an offer on our house 6 months before the fire. My parents turned it down. A month later, he'd died in a car accident, or so the papers said. But the timing felt too convenient. I found an old photo of him online, tall, broad-shouldered, always in a dark coat. My mind flashed to Callahan's story. Could it have been him? I needed more. I tracked down an old contact of Grayson's, a former associate named Marie who still lived nearby. She ran a small diner now, and I found her wiping down counters after the lunch rush. When I mentioned Grayson and the fire, her face paled. Elliot was ruthless, she said, glancing around like someone might be listening. He'd do anything to get what he wanted, bribes, threats, worse. If your folks said no to him, he wouldn't just let it go, but he's been dead for years. What if he's not? I asked, showing her the letter. She read it, her hands shaking. This sounds like his style. He used to send notes like that to scare people, but if it's not him, she trailed off, then leaned closer. Check the old warehouse on Miller Street, it was his base. If there's anything left of his operation, it'd be there. That night, I went to the warehouse, a crumbling relic on the edge of town. The door was padlocked, but the windows were boarded up loosely. I pried one open and slipped inside, my flashlight cutting through the dark. The place was a mess: old papers, rusted equipment, and a faint smell of gasoline that made my skin crawl. In a back room, I found a filing cabinet, half buried under debris. Inside were records, property deals, names, dates. My parents' address was there, marked with a red X and the word refused. Next to it, a handwritten note. Handle it. My heart stopped as I heard a creak behind me. I turned, but no one was there. Just the wind, I told myself, but my hands were shaking as I stuffed the papers in my bag. I needed to get out now. Back home, I spread the documents out, piecing it together. Grayson, or someone tied to him, had wanted our land, and when my parents refused, the fire happened. The letter suggested I was the target, but why? To send a message. To tie up loose ends. And who was behind it now, 5 years later? I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing: I wasn't safe. I called a detective I'd found online, one who specialized in cold cases, and sent her everything. The letter, Callahan's story, the warehouse documents. She promised to look into it, but warned me to lay low. As I hung up, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "You're digging where you shouldn't. Stop or you'll burn too." I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. Whoever started that fire was still out there, and they were watching me. Phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the table. The text glowed on the screen: "You're digging where you shouldn't. Stop or you'll burn too." My pulse hammered in my ears, the words echoing the letter's threat. I checked the locks again, though I knew it wouldn't matter. Whoever sent this knew where I lived, what I was doing. They'd been watching me, maybe for years. I grabbed the letter and the warehouse documents, shoving them into a backpack. Staying here wasn't safe. I needed somewhere to think, somewhere they wouldn't expect. My mind raced to my old friend Tara, who'd moved to a nearby city after high school. She'd always been the practical one, the one who'd listen without judging. I shot her a text: "Can I crash at your place? Emergency." Her reply came fast: "Get here now. I'll leave the door unlocked." I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my bag, and slipped out the back door, sticking to the shadows. The streets were quiet, but every rustle of leaves made me jump. I took a bus to Tara's city, an hour away, my eyes scanning every passenger for a threat. No one followed me, or so I hoped. Tara's apartment was a small, cluttered haven above a bookstore. She opened the door before I could knock, her face tight with worry. "You look like hell," she said, pulling me inside. I spilled everything: the fire, the letter, Callahan's story, the warehouse, the text. Her eyes widened as I showed her the documents, the red X on my parents' address burning like an accusation. "This is insane," she said, pacing. "You need to go to the police like yesterday." "I did," I said. "I sent everything to a detective, but what if they don't move fast enough? Whoever's doing this isn't playing around." Tara nodded, biting her lip. "Okay. You stay here, we'll figure out what's next." That night I barely slept, the couch lumpy under me, my mind replaying the text. "You'll burn too." At dawn, I checked my phone, no new messages, but an email from the detective, Sarah Monroe. She'd reviewed the documents and found something. Elliot Grayson's death wasn't as clear-cut as the papers claimed. The car accident had been staged, she wrote, with signs of tampering on the brake lines. No one had pursued it. Grayson had too many enemies, and the town was happy to close the case. But if he was alive, or if someone was continuing his work, I was in deeper than I thought. Monroe wanted to meet, but not in town. "Too many eyes," she wrote. She suggested a diner 2 towns over, tomorrow at noon. I agreed, but the weight felt like a trap closing around me. Tara had to work, so I spent the morning digging online, using her laptop to search for more on Grayson. I found a grainy photo on an old ex-post from a local conspiracy nut. Grayson at a gas station, time-stamped a year after his supposed death. The caption rambled about ghosts of greed, but the image was clear enough. Tall, dark coat, just like Callahan described. My stomach twisted. Was he really alive, or was someone using his name to scare me? I also found mentions of a shell company tied to Grayson, Vantage Holdings. It had bought up half the town's properties, including several near my old house. One name kept popping up in the records: Daniel Pierce, a lawyer who'd handled Grayson's deals. If anyone knew what Grayson was up to, it'd be him. I found his office address online, still in town. Against my better judgment, I decided to go before meeting Monroe. I needed answers, not just promises. I borrowed Tara's car and drove back, my nerves on edge. Pierce's office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the town's faded charm. The receptionist eyed me warily, but I lied, saying I had an appointment. Pierce, a wiry man with sharp eyes, didn't look surprised when I walked in. That alone set my teeth on edge. "I know who you are," he said, leaning back in his chair. "The Fire Kid, what do you want?" I didn't waste time. I slid the letter across his desk. "This came to me, and I found records in Grayson's old warehouse. My parents' house marked Handle It. What do you know?" His face didn't change, but his fingers twitched. "Grayson's dead, you're chasing ghosts." "Then why am I getting threats?" I snapped, pulling out my phone to show the text. "Who's doing this?" He glanced at the screen, then pushed it back. "You're stirring up trouble. My advice, let it go. Old deals, old grudges, they don't concern you." "Someone burned my family alive," I said, my voice shaking. "It concerns me." He stood, adjusting his tie. "I don't know anything about a fire, but if you keep digging, you'll find more than you want. Leave now." I wanted to push, but his tone, and the way he kept glancing at the door, told me I'd get nothing else. I left, my mind racing. He knew something, but he was scared too. Of what? Or who? I drove to the diner to meet Monroe, arriving early to scope the place out. It was a greasy spoon, half empty, smelling of coffee and bacon. Monroe slid into the booth across from me at noon sharp, her face all business. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense vibe. "I looked into Vantage Holdings," she said, keeping her voice low. "It's still active despite Grayson's death. Someone's running it, funneling money through offshore accounts. Your parents' property was sold after the fire cheap to a Vantage subsidiary. Someone wanted that land bad." "Who's running it now?" I asked. She hesitated. "I don't have a name yet, but I found a connection to Pierce, the lawyer. He's been moving money for them quietly. And there's something else." She slid a photo across the table, a blurry security camera shot of a man in a dark coat, standing outside my old house a week before the fire. This was buried in the original case file. Never followed up. It was him, Grayson, or someone posing as him. My hands shook as I stared at the photo. "What do I do?" "Stay hidden," she said. "I'm digging deeper, but these people don't mess around. If they're after you, it's because you're a loose end." As we spoke, my phone buzzed again. Another text, same unknown number. "You didn't listen. Tonight you burn." I showed Monroe, my voice barely steady. She grabbed my arm. "You're coming with me." Now, we left the diner, her car speeding toward a safe house she knew. But as we turned onto the highway, headlights flared behind us, too close, too fast. A black SUV roared up, swerving to cut us off. Monroe cursed, flooring the gas, but the SUV matched us, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. "Hold on," she shouted, yanking the wheel. The car skidded, tires screaming as the SUV rammed us from behind. My head slammed against the window, pain exploding in my skull. The world spun, and all I could think was, they found me. The SUV rammed us again, the impact jolting my teeth and sending a sharp pain through my neck. Monroe gripped the wheel, her knuckles white, weaving through traffic as horns blared around us. The highway stretched dark and endless, the SUV's headlights a relentless glare in the rearview mirror. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. "Who are they?" I gasped, clutching the door handle as we swerved. "No idea," Monroe snapped, her eyes darting between the road and the mirror. "But they're not amateurs. Stay down." I ducked, my mind racing. The text, "Tonight you burn," echoed in my head. They weren't just trying to scare me anymore. This was real. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and sent Tara a quick message. "In trouble. Black SUV, Highway 17. If something happened to me, someone had to know." Monroe took a sharp exit, tires screeching as we veered onto a narrow side road lined with trees. The SUV followed, its engine roaring like a predator closing in. "There's a police station 10 miles from here," she said, voice tight. "If we can make it." She didn't finish. The SUV surged forward, clipping our rear bumper. The car fishtailed, gravel crunching under the tires as Monroe fought to keep control. For a moment I thought we'd spin out, but she straightened the wheel, gunning it toward a bend in the road. The trees loomed closer, their shadows swallowing the moonlight. Then a deafening bang. The car lurched and I smelled burning rubber. "They shot the tire," Monroe yelled, slamming the brakes as we skidded toward a ditch. The world tilted, my stomach dropping as we crashed through underbrush and came to a bone-rattling stop. My head throbbed, blood trickling down my temple. Monroe was already unbuckling, pulling a gun from her holster. "Stay low and follow me," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos. I nodded, adrenaline numbing the pain as I scrambled out after her. The SUV had stopped 50 yards back, its doors opening. Two figures stepped out, silhouettes in the dark, one tall and broad, the other slighter, both moving with purpose. I couldn't see their faces, but the taller one held something, a rifle maybe. Monroe grabbed my arm, pulling me into the woods. Branches snapped underfoot as we ran, the cold air burning my lungs. Behind us, footsteps crunched, deliberate and unhurried. They knew we had nowhere to go. My backpack thumped against my spine, the letter and documents still inside. I cursed myself for not hiding them somewhere safe. We crouched behind a cluster of pines, Monroe's gun trained on the darkness. "They're tracking us," she muttered. "Probably have night vision or something. We need to split up." "No way," I hissed. "I'm not leaving you." "You're the target," she said, her eyes hard. "If they get you, this is over. Head west. There's a gas station a mile out. Call for help. I'll hold them off." Before I could argue, a twig snapped nearby, too close. Monroe shoved me toward the trees. "Go," she whispered. I stumbled forward, heart in my throat, and ran, the forest swallowing me whole. Behind me, I heard a muffled shout, then a gunshot. I froze, every instinct screaming to go back, but Monroe's words echoed. "You're the target." I kept moving, branches clawing at my face, until I saw the faint glow of lights in the distance. The gas station was a rundown relic, its neon sign flickering. I burst through the door, startling the clerk, a bored-looking guy in his 20s. "I need your phone," I gasped, my voice ragged. He blinked, then pointed to a landline behind the counter. I dialed 911, stammering out our location and what had happened. The operator promised help was on the way, but every second felt like an eternity. As I hung up, the clerk stared at me, his eyes narrowing. "You're that kid from the fire, aren't you? I saw you on the news years ago." I nodded, too exhausted to lie. "Yeah. And someone's trying to finish what they started." He hesitated, then grabbed a baseball bat from under the counter. "No one's coming in here without a fight," he said, surprising me with his resolve. I managed a weak nod, grateful for any ally. Minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance. 2 police cars pulled up, lights flashing. I explained everything, the letter, the warehouse, the SUV, Monroe. The officers exchanged glances, one radioing for backup while the other took my statement. They found Monroe a half-mile away, alive but banged up, a bullet grazed on her arm. She'd managed to lose the pursuers in the woods, but they'd vanished, the SUV gone like it had never existed. The police escorted us to the station, a squat brick building that smelled of burnt coffee. Monroe sat with me, her arm bandaged, her face grim. "They weren't just hired muscle," she said. "That was professional. Someone with money and reach is behind this." I pulled out the documents from my backpack, spreading them on the table. The red X on my parents' address stared back at me. "It's about the land, isn't it? Grayson, or whoever's using his name, wanted it, and now they want me gone." Monroe nodded. "Vantage Holdings is the key. I ran more checks while you were at the gas station. The company's still active, but it's buried under layers of shell corporations. Someone's pulling the strings, and Pierce knows who." The police agreed to put me in protective custody, but I wasn't naive enough to think that would stop whoever was after me. While they processed my statement, I used a station computer to dig deeper into Vantage Holdings. An old ex-post from a whistleblower account mentioned a name tied to the company. Cassandra Holt, a silent partner who'd taken over after Grayson's death. No photos, no public records, just a name and a reputation for ruthlessness. Could she be the one sending the threats? The next morning, Monroe and I met with a federal agent she'd called in, a guy named Tors who specialized in organized crime. He studied the documents, his jaw tightening. "This is bigger than a land grab," he said. "Vantage was into more than real estate, money laundering, maybe worse. Your parents' property was prime for a front, close to the highway, easy to move things through. If they wouldn't sell, they were a problem." "So they burned my family to get it?" My voice cracked, anger boiling over. Tors didn't flinch. "It's possible, and if Holt's running things now, she's cleaning house. You're a witness, even if you didn't know it." Monroe leaned forward. "We need to find Holt. And we need to move fast." Tors agreed to put a tail on Pierce and dig into Holt's whereabouts, but he warned me to stay out of it. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "Don't push it." I nodded, but I wasn't done. That night in a motel under police watch, I lay awake, the letter's words burning in my mind. The fire was never meant for them. It was meant for you. It wasn't just about the land. There was something personal here, something I was missing. I thought back to my parents' whispers, Dad's mention of Elliot. Had they known something about Grayson? Had they been hiding something from me? My phone buzzed, startling me. Another text from an unknown number. You can't hide forever. We know where you are. I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. The motel walls felt like they were closing in. Whoever was behind this wasn't just chasing me, they were toying with me. And I was done running. The motel room felt like a cage, the dim light casting shadows that seemed to shift with every creak of the building. The text, you can't hide forever. We know where you are, glowed on my phone, taunting me. My hands shook, but anger was overtaking fear. 5 years ago, they took my family. Now they were coming for me, and I wasn't going to wait for them to strike. I called Monroe, who was in the next room with a uniformed officer. She answered on the first ring, her voice sharp. What's wrong? Another text, I said, forwarding it to her. They know I'm here, we need to move. She was at my door in seconds, the officer behind her, radio crackling. Torres is tracking Pierce, she said, checking her gun. We've got a lead on Cassandra Holt, too. She's been off the grid, but her name popped up in a property deal last week. Same MO as Vantage Holdings. We're closing in, but you're right. This place isn't safe. The officer drove us to a new location, a safe house in a quiet suburb, while Monroe coordinated with Torres. I sat in the back, clutching my backpack, the letter and documents inside feeling like a ticking bomb. The safe house was a nondescript split level, blinds drawn with 2 more agents waiting inside. They set up a perimeter, but I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were still on me. Torres called an hour later with news. Pierce cracked, he said over speakerphone. He's been funneling money for Holt, who's very much alive and running Vantage. She's holed up in a penthouse downtown, but she's got muscle ex-military types. And she knows you're digging. Pierce said she's obsessed with tying up loose ends from Grayson's era, especially your family. Why me? I demanded. What did I do? Torres hesitated. Pierce didn't know details, but he said Holt mentioned a debt. Something about your dad. He didn't just refuse to sell. He had something on Grayson, evidence of his laundering. Pierce thinks your dad was going to the feds before the fire. My stomach dropped. Those late-night whispers, Dad's paranoia, it made sense now. He'd been trying to protect us, and it got them killed. But why target me? I was just a kid. Unless I was the last piece of that evidence, the one who might remember something. Monroe hung up, her face grim. We're raiding Holt's place tonight. You stay here locked down. This ends now. I nodded, but my mind was racing. I couldn't just sit here, not when I was this close. If Holt had answers, I needed to hear them. I waited until Monroe and the agents left, leaving one officer outside. He was distracted, checking his phone. I slipped out the back, grabbing a bike from the garage. It was reckless, but I'd come too far to hide. Holt's penthouse was in a sleek high-rise, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed money. I stayed in the shadows across the street, watching as police cars rolled up, silent but unmistakable. Monroe and Torres were there, leading a team in tactical gear. My heart pounded as they disappeared inside. Minutes dragged like hours. Then chaos, gunshots echoed from the building, sharp and staccato. I ducked behind a dumpster, my breath hitching. A black SUV peeled out from an alley, tires screeching, just like the one that chased us. It sped past, and for a split second I saw her in the passenger seat, a woman with sharp features, dark hair pulled tight, eyes scanning the street. Holt, she didn't see me, but I memorized her face. The police were too busy storming the penthouse to notice the SUV slipping away. I texted Monroe, Holt's escaping. Black SUV heading east on 5th. Then I pedaled after it, my legs burning, knowing it was stupid but unable to stop. I had to know. The SUV pulled into an industrial lot, a maze of warehouses and shipping containers. I ditched the bike and crept closer, staying low. Holt stepped out, barking orders at 2 men, big guys armed just like Torres warned. She was pacing, phone to her ear, her voice carrying in the still night. Clean it up, she snapped. The kid's still out there and she knows too much. Find her. I froze, my blood cold. She was talking about me. I edged closer, hiding behind a crate, and saw her pull a small box from her coat. She opened it, revealing a stack of papers and a USB drive. This is all Grayson left, she said to one of the men. Your dad's evidence. If it gets out, we're done. My dad. He had something, proof of Grayson's crimes, maybe enough to bring down Vantage. That's why they wanted me dead. I wasn't just a loose end. I was a link to whatever he'd hidden. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, and started recording. Before I could get more, a hand clamped over my mouth. I thrashed, but the grip was iron. One of Holt's men dragged me out, my phone clattering to the ground. Holt turned, her eyes locking onto mine, cold and calculating. "You're persistent," she said, almost amused. "Just like your father." I spat at her, struggling against the man's hold. "You killed my family." She tilted her head. "Grayson's orders, your dad was going to ruin everything. The fire was supposed to take you all, but you slipped through. My mistake." She nodded to the man. "Finish it." He raised a gun, but before he could pull the trigger, sirens wailed. Headlights flooded the lot as police cars roared in, Monroe and Torres at the lead. The second man fired, bullets pinging off metal, but the cops returned fire, dropping him. My captor hesitated, and I drove my elbow into his gut, breaking free. I dove behind a container as chaos erupted, shouts, gunfire, the screech of tires. When it stopped, I peeked out. Holt was gone, the SUV vanished, but her box lay abandoned on the ground. Monroe ran to me, pulling me up. "You idiot," she snapped, but there was relief in her eyes. "You okay?" I nodded, pointing to the box. Torres grabbed it, pulling out the papers and USB. "This could be it," he said. "Grayson's records, your dad's evidence." Back at the station, they cracked the USB. It was everything: ledgers, bank transfers, proof of Vantage's laundering tied to Grayson and Holt. My dad had copied it before the fire, hiding it somewhere they couldn't find. The police issued a warrant for Holt, but she'd gone underground, her network unraveling as arrests piled up. Pierce turned state's evidence, spilling more about Vantage's operations. I went back to Tara's, the weight of 5 years lifting, but not gone. The evidence cleared my dad's name, exposed Grayson's empire, and put Holt on the run. But I knew she was still out there, and part of me wondered if she'd come back to finish what she started. For now, I had the truth. My family didn't die for nothing. They died because they stood up to monsters. And I'd keep fighting for them.